When it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2, like many others, I was very much excited for its release. We're constantly following all the information surrounding the console up until its highly anticipated launch day. After a pretty lengthy 8 years of the previous system, a new generation has just kickstarted with the Switch 2. We now have this shiny new piece of machinery in our hands, and like every other Nintendo console, certain expectations are planted in the minds of many given the company's rich history of being hardware developers. The honeymoon period is starting to settle down. Outlets and fans including myself have some strong opinions on this system that are both positive and negative. Now that an entire month has passed on the Switch 2, let's review the console so far, going over its pros and cons alongside what the future holds for this system. But first off, please bear in mind that my thoughts in this video will vary from many places out there, especially social media. Since we're all fans of Nintendo, let's respect one another's opinions on the Switch 2 and feel free to let me know what you think about it down in the comment section, and maybe even consider subscribing if you enjoy these types of videos. It's appreciated and helps this channel grow. Now, with all that out of the way, let's jump right into this topic. When it comes to my experience so far with the Switch 2, things have overall been fairly positive. The magnetic Joy-Con 2s, despite seeing heavy use this past month, so far show no signs of wear and tear when connected to the main system and feels like one unit, unlike how it was with the Switch 1. I will say though, and maybe it's just a unique problem that I've ran into, but the Switch 2 does get much hotter than the original. In particular, when playing games that require a lot of performance online like Street Fighter 6 and Mario Kart World in handheld, I can feel the internal fan of the console spinning and producing a small vibration in my hands. It's nothing major, especially if you're used to modern systems like the PlayStation 5. But because you're physically holding the device, you do in the literal sense feel it more. I've also disabled the vibration to make sure it wasn't the rumble to further confirm that it was in fact a fan. This sensation is very similar to the feeling of the UMD spinning on the PSP if you remember how that felt, nothing too distracting, but it is somewhat irritating. Also, I noticed the dock gets really hot this time around, which never really happened to me on the Switch 1, but I guess that's because there is a fan inside of it unlike the previous model. The battery life is also another small issue I've ran into. It's not awful, but it does drain quickly. I've seen online guides on how to fix this issue, but it shouldn't really fall onto fans to figure this stuff out. Anyway, small complaints aside, the system is surprisingly comfortable to use in handheld. With the original Switch, I brought a pair of those Nixie Joy-Cons since my hands will cramp up after just a few minutes of use. But with the Joy-Con 2's bigger size, this isn't an issue for me personally anymore. Also, on the topic of ergonomics, I need to say this in this video, Nintendo hands down, and this is coming from the fussiest person on the planet when it comes to this topic, but they did it. They made what I would consider their all-time greatest controller with the Pro Controller 2. Sorry old friend, you have been dethroned. The D-pad on this thing is perfect with how it pivots and is my go-to for indies and 2D fighting games. The analog sticks feel well rounded and don't snag at all, it's genuinely the most comfortable controller going. I had some issues with the original Pro Controller, like its glossy finish and transparent design, not to mention the horrendous D-pad. But seriously, Nintendo went above and beyond addressing all the issues with their previous model. The headphone jack's audio quality is also top notch. Sorry for the tangent, I'm just pretty opinionated when it comes to this topic. Anyway, back to the main system. One last comment I have on the hardware side of the Switch 2, and that's to do with its mouse controls. I've already made a video going in depth on them last month, but so far with the small amount of titles demonstrating the technology, I've really enjoyed them. My only complaint is how at the moment there aren't any big substantial experiences showcasing the controller, with them instead being used mostly for mini games and PC ports. Also, the Switch 2 welcome talk just sucks, but once again I've already dived into that topic. Anyway, time will only tell if this control scheme sticks, but I'm cautiously optimistic in seeing how they will be used in the future. Let's hope Drag X Drive in August is a success, since it seems like that title is Nintendo's big push with this gimmick. Moving on from the hardware side of things into the software, let's talk about the Switch 2's library of games. I can understand that it's still early days with this one, but when you consider how this system is already backwards compatible and has amazing third-party support, I have played this console every day since launch, which is a good sign. In particular, I've really been enjoying playing Street Fighter 6, being able to boot it up and play a few games here and there really makes it feel at home on a handheld. Also, what would this channel be without mentioning JRPGs? Bravely Default and the recently released Rider Remastered have been excellent experiences and run incredibly smooth. My only issues is the whole keycard situation, but things are looking more hopeful with the news that more companies are going back to putting their entire games on the cartridge, alongside Nintendo themselves confirming that they'll never do this. I've already gone at length tackling this topic, and honestly I'm exhausted hearing about it at this point, but it's worth mentioning since this is a review of the Switch 2. Anyway, I'm never worried when it comes to support from Nintendo for their systems. With all their consoles, you're always guaranteed a new Mario, Zelda and Pokemon title at some point, so unlike its competitors that can suffer software drought, is never really an issue when purchasing a Nintendo console. Not to mention the fact that I still have my backlog being conveniently moved over from the Switch 1 with the system's interesting use of backwards compatibility. I am a little iffy however on how they're going about upgrading previous games to run better on the Switch 2. Some of them are a paid upgrade whilst others are free. Also, I feel like they're going to drip feed upgrading older titles when making them run better on the Switch 2. Like seriously, I really want to see the Thousand Year Door and Xenoblade Chronicles X get Switch 2 versions. They already look amazing and would look even better with the upgraded performance. Also, is it just me or is Splatoon 3 not getting mouse support with its upgrade and missed opportunity? It's kinda disappointing. Anyway, speaking of drip feed, let's talk about the Switch Online service. It's looking like with the GameCube Classic, similar to previous collections, we'll be getting one game a month with the subscription service. I'm not the biggest fan with this drip feed, but to be fair, GameCube games are much bigger in the literal sense, both content wise and file size wise, so the smaller output kinda makes sense here. Granted, not having hallmark titles like Mario Kart Double Dash and Sunshine on the service at launch does feel strange. Emulation wise, these titles are pretty much ran flawlessly from my time with them. There was some audio issues with Mario Strikers, but from what I remember that was in the original. Granted, I haven't gotten around to replaying the Wind Waker yet, which now runs at 60 frames per second, which is something I'd like to do at some point. The online as a whole for the Switch 2 in my opinion has been way better than its predecessor. Connections in Mario Kart World and Street Fighter 6 have been rock solid for the most part. With the latter title being a fighting game with rollback and crossplay, I was extra critical when reviewing this. Also, some compliments have to be given to the Switch 2's new Gamechat service. Now, it's not perfect by all means, but being able to share a game with select titles over the internet has ran fairly smooth with some noticeable delay, but nothing too bad. This is definitely something the Switch 1 couldn't do with just how limited the Wi-Fi felt at times on that system, and shows the extra power that this machine is capable of. But I will say, whenever you share a game, you get this horrendous border with the screen being smaller, and just like the classic games, it looks terrible. I 100% doubt that they'll ever give you the option to get rid of this, since the borders have been an issue that you can't turn off since 2018, with people asking for an option to just have it be all black. Regardless, having the option to share games is a nice way to spend time with friends. The microphone quality of the Switch 2 is also genuinely impressive. Its ability to detect unwanted noises and suppress them is better than whatever Discord's been using. Unfortunately, so far, you can't use your own microphone with the system, but to be fair, the one that's built in is genuinely amazing. I recommend checking it out if you haven't. One last point with Gamechat worth mentioning is screen sharing. This admittingly looks pretty bad. In some ways, it's nice to glance at whatever your friend's playing every now and then, but when zooming into their screen and watching it, it's really low quality. Despite running at like 10 frames per second, the audio lag and screen tearing is also terrible. Hopefully it does get fixed and tweaked over time since it was a big part of the system's marketing, but yeah, overall for talking and game sharing, Gamechat is great. For screen sharing, it could be way better. One last small comment I'd like to say is how when making a party, you can't invite players after already creating a party. So if another player you know sees you online and wants to join the party, you have to kick everyone out and start a new one, which needless to say is a bit of a backwards way of doing things compared to other Gamechat options out there. I know this is wishful thinking, but Discord support for the Switch 2 will be great, but that is likely never going to happen. Moving on, the eShop for the Switch 2 was another aspect people were highly anticipating. Everyone knows that the Switch 2's eShop was terrible, filled with lag and shovelware, and was just a nightmare to navigate. But things are better here, it loads immediately and is fairly simple to navigate. I'm also a fan of this one feature it has where depending on what games you've been playing, the store will recommend you other titles that are similar to them, and it's fairly good at finding games tailored to your tastes. It's a nice touch of personality. On a more critical level however, shovelware and you know what games are still an issue, however unlike the Switch 1 eShop they no longer appear on the front page as much. Also, a small rant incoming, I have a complaint to Steam, PlayStation and Nintendo, please stop letting AI games clog up your store feed. I mean, come on, get some decent quality control and close the damn door, don't let this slop in. Nothing good comes from these games being on these storefronts, and they are literally just scams and stolen assets which take advantage of those who don't know that they are even AI. Anyway, sorry for the rant, I just needed to vent after seeing so much of this rubbish, it feels dystopian at times. Overall, the Switch 2's eShop experience is a huge step over its predecessor but could still be better, however the issues it has is not unique to this platform and is more of a widespread issue. Moving on now, I'm not a big customizable guy, but I can understand how many fans aren't happy with how the home menu looks for the Switch 2, with it essentially just being the Switch 1's. Personally, I see a console's home menu as essentially just a portal to the games themselves, so this minimal look doesn't really bother me. I don't know if they'll actually add themes at some point, that's been a topic I've seen brought up for years since the Switch 1 came out, but I will say that on a practical level, the Switch 2's user interface is very quick at loading software. Also, due to the advanced reading speeds of the microSD Express cartridge technology, when browsing your album, editing or posting videos and pictures, loading times are way quicker than the previous system. Being able to send screenshots and videos to your phone is an appreciated convenience. But once again, videos are limited to just 30 seconds and are heavily compressed. My only reason behind why this limitation is still in place is because of the ability to send them over the internet to another device. But still, being so restricted is a hassle, especially if you're without external methods like a capture card. Once again, hopefully an update will fix these limitations. When comparing the Switch 2's launch to the Switch 1, it's clear as day to see the huge improvements Nintendo has made. The Switch 2 has already managed to sell 5 million consoles in less than a month, with them being well stocked in most regions. When also comparing both launch lineups, sure we had a new 3D Zelda, but the Switch 2 finally gave us a new Mario Kart, not to mention its incredible back catalogue of titles given thanks to the Switch 1's quality game library. Third parties are also on board from the beginning with their support, since the distrust Nintendo had with them with the Wii U to Switch transition is a thing of the past. Look at it this way, when the Switch 1 came out, all I played was Breath of the Wild and the Japanese demo for Puyo Puyo Tetris, since it wasn't a launch title here in the West. With the Switch 2 I played Mario Kart World, Deltarune, which is a masterpiece by the way, Bravely Default, Street Fighter 6 and Rider Remastered, not to mention the many other Switch 1 games that were already available. The only time I even looked at another system during its release month is with Elden Ring Night Rain, which is my strange addiction, and of course with Death Stranding 2. I know quantity isn't everything, but I feel like the Switch 2 has what it takes to maybe even top its predecessor with all of its major improvements, impressive library and future titles or anything to go by. Overall, I've really enjoyed my time with the Switch 2, sure things are still early days and I can understand that the uncertainty of the future is a thing, will the system truly deliver, who can really tell? But right now, in this moment with the trajectory and promises being made, the Switch 2's future is looking incredibly bright. If you was at all on the fence of getting one, as someone new to Nintendo or as a fan who hasn't taken the dive yet, I feel like this system is well worth it. Now, with all that being said, I'm curious, what do you think about the Switch 2? Are you a fan of it, or do you think there's some issues that I didn't bring up here? Feel free to let me know in the comment section. Also, any feedback on this video will be appreciated. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you have a nice rest of your day.